Hello, math humans. We're going to do 3.1b today. We're going to be talking about interest. So there are basically three different types of interest: simple interest, compound interest, and interest compounded continuously. So we're going to talk about and manage these three different types of interest. Simple interest is something that you're already expected to know, but we're going to review that. PreCalc covers compound interest and interest compounded continuously because it's an exponential function. So of the three types of interest, simple interest are what I call often, and it's not only this, but this is a good way to think about it, are the big ticket items. So that might be if you're buying a house or a car or a boat or any other fun toy, right? Or maybe I'm buying a quad. Compound interest, on the other hand, and it's calculated completely differently, you'll see why in a minute, are investments maybe, or you've borrowed money, or it is credit cards. And this is the one that gets a little bit scary, and we will talk about this one. The next one is interest compounded continuously. And again, these aren't limited to just these items. These are just examples. But these would be similar to your fast cash or payday loans. I spelled that wrong. Payday loans, or I think you see them called title loans. And we'll talk about this later, but this is basically legal extortion. And extortion means you are using somebody else's money at an exorbitant rate of interest. So let's start by talking about simple interest. So for simple interest, interest is equal to the principal, the rate, and the time. So I is how much interest you're going to pay. So if I use somebody else's money, I have to pay them for the privilege of using their money. P is the principal, and that is the initial cost or the initial investment. R is going to be the interest rate. And when we do that, it's always going to be in decimal form. And then T is equal to time. And the default for simple interest is that it's going to be for years. Okay? All right, so let's do an example of simple interest. So this will be our first example. And so let's buy a house in Flagstaff. So we're going to buy a house in Flagstaff. So in 2020, I did a little bit of research, and I found that the average cost of a house in Flagstaff is $450,000. Remember, it's poverty with a view. And then the median, remember that's the middle value, is about $375,000. So we're going to do this one because this is a little bit more for normal people. We're going to buy our house at 5.5% interest, which is a fairly decent interest rate, and we're going to do that for 30 years. So typically when you buy a house, there are two loan terms. Term means how long is the loan good for. Oftentimes we start at 30 years, and then as the loan goes on, we can redo it for 15 years so that I'm not paying as much interest. So here's the interesting thing. We're just going to calculate the interest. So that's how much I have to pay for borrowing somebody else's money. So it's going to be the $375,000, and I'm going to multiply by 0.055 because that's 5.5% interest, and I'm going to do that for 30 years. And when you do that, you get $618,750. And that is not a mistake. And what you need to understand is this is just how much money you pay for borrowing somebody else's money for 30 years. That's pretty incredible. So now let's just take this and calculate what our monthly payment would be, just because we can. So my monthly payment, I'm going to take the amount of the house, which was $375,000. I'm going to add the interest. Notice that the interest is not quite double what your house cost. I'm going to divide it by 30 years and 12 payments per year, because when you pay off a house, it is a monthly payment. You pay every month. If I do this math, then I am going to be paying $1,043 and that many cents for the 30 years that I owe money on my house. So that is a rude awakening. So something you should talk to your parents about budgeting. How much do they spend each month on a monthly payment? Or if you're not buying a house, how much do your parents spend a month to rent something in Flagstaff? It's very eye-opening. All right, so the next type of interest that we're going to talk about is compound interest. This works in your favor if you are borrowing money. It works against you if you are using a credit card. So the formula for this is A is equal to P times 1 plus R divided by N raised to the NT. So that's a lot of variables. A, I call it is the amount in the bank, okay? Or it's how much you owe. It is the principal plus the interest that you have paid in a period of time. P is always going to be principal when we're talking about money. R is the rate, and again, it's always going to be as a decimal. N is the compounding period, and then T is equal to time. Alrighty. So one of the things that I want you to understand, because it's really important when you understand the difference between the two interests, simple interest is a linear function, and it looks like that. Compound interest is an exponential function, which is why it's in this chapter, and it looks like this. So as time goes on, because time is our independent variable, so as time marches on, the amount of money that you are either receiving or that you are paying, which would be your credit card, is growing exponentially. So that means the longer time goes, the higher your debt goes. All right, so let's do a lovely little example first, and we're going to be making money, which is much better than paying money. I'm going to have an initial investment. Another way to think about this is it's your initial amount, which is the y-intercept, and our initial investment is going to be $2,500. My interest rate is 3.5% compounded, somebody loves me, monthly. And I get it in stereo because my computer and phone are linked. And then my time is going to equal 10 years. And so I want to know how much is my investment worth after 10 years. So in this particular case, the compound interest is going to work in our favor. So my formula is A is equal to P times 1 plus R divided by N raised to the NT. When I am working with formulas, I always write the formula down without numbers in it because it helps me to not screw up where they go. So then I'm going to write down, here's my initial investment. Here's 1 plus, my interest rate is 0.035, and I'm going to divide by compounding period of 4, and there are 4 compounding periods for 10 years, okay? One of the biggest mistakes in this particular method is that a lot of people like to do this in steps on their calculator. If you do, you will get a problem wrong because this is an exponential function and you're generating a lot of error. So when you put this in your calculator, I'll just show you. I'm going to quit and clear. You should always do it in one step. So I'm going to enter the 2,500 times 1 plus the 0.035 divided by 4, close parentheses, raised to the 4 times 10, in case you don't know what that number is. And then I hit enter. Okay, if I do it, if I get a value for this and I round it off, I will get an incorrect answer. Always do it in one fell swoop on your calculator. So the amount of money in the bank, so A is equal to 445.862, alrighty? And that is how much my investment is worth after 10 years, okay? If I did it with simple interest, it would be significantly lower. Alrighty, now let's talk about compounding periods. Alright, so for compounding periods, I can compound annually, which means it would be one time per year. I could compound biannually, which would mean it'd be, bad grammar, twice a year. I could do quarterly, which means it would be 4 times a year. And I could do monthly. That's a sad day. This is your credit card, by the way, which would be 12 times a year. And you can't see those, so let me move that up. So your credit card, you would be being charged interest every month, and so that means that the amount of money that you would owe is growing exponentially, right? There is another one, as we could go on and we could do compounded weekly, we could do compounded daily, and we could do compounded in DED hourly. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. As these compounding periods get tighter and tighter and tighter, the 1 plus R divided by N portion of your formula is going to be E. And so this is the ratio where E comes from. It's 1 plus the rate divided by N. Ready? So let's talk about that particular type of interest. That is interest compounded continuously. You will always see this word in these types of problems, and your formula would be A is equal to PE, because this is the 1 plus R divided by N raised to the, RT. Sorry, brain and mouth aren't working at the same speed. There we go. Alrighty? So, as this compounding period gets tighter and tighter, then we call it compounded continuously, and then this is the new formula. So it's PERT, A is equal to PE to the RT, in case you can't read my crappy handwriting. Alrighty, so we're going to do an example, for example 3, and we're going to talk about what's called a predatory, that just sounds horrible, loan. So there are companies that are banking on the fact that you won't be able to pay your loan back over the short period of time, and they make exorbitant amounts of money at your expense. So I did some phone calling, which was really entertaining, and people wouldn't talk to me because I was asking too many questions. So then I just looked it up and found out. So if you do a payday loan for whatever company, here's how this would work, and it's interest compounded continuously. They would charge you 391% for 2 weeks. And the commercials that you see on TV are often, we would give you $1,000 and we will loan it to you for 2 weeks. they don't tell you, though, is that the interest rate is 391%. If you don't pay that back in 2 weeks, so which most people can't, then the interest rate jumps to 521%, and that's for the next 2 weeks. So you can see that very, 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 very quickly, your money is going to be very expensive. And for the $1,000 that you borrowed to get you out of a bind, you could be paying for that for the rest of your life. So there's your little adulting lesson. Don't ever go to one of those facilities. If you're in the military, they actually forbid you to go to one because you could never be able to get out of that debt. So now let's say I'm going to, on a brighter note, I'm going to deposit $5,000 into an account. My rate that I deposit it at is 7.5%, and it's going to be compounded continuously. Woo, that's a long word to spell. And I'm going to invest for 30 years. So the question is, what is my investment worth after 30 years? So that means that you put a sum of money. We're going to put $5,000 into an account, and we're not going to touch it for 30 years. So if we do our calculation, PE to the RT, my principal was $5,000, my E, my rate was 0.075, and I'm going to do that for 30 years. Same thing holds true for this on your grapher. So you should put this in. If I clear, I'm going to have 5,000, second E, raised to the 0.075 times 30, and I'm going to hit enter. So I always want to do it in one fell swoop on my calculator, and this equals 47,438.679. So after 30 years, I would have $47,000 in the bank. All right, my dears, that is it for today. I will see you soon.